I never imagined that a throwaway remark could destroy so many relationships, but that is exactly what happened. I once joked that I might have chosen my husband's friend instead of him, and that friend didn't hear it as humor. What I intended as a careless comment became something irreversible. My name is Linda. I'm 40 years old, and until last year, I was married to a man named Brian. We lived in a quiet town in Oregon, the kind of place where neighbors recognize each other's pets and exchange waves at intersections. Brian and I had been together for 11 years. Ours wasn't a loud or dramatic marriage. There were no screaming fights or shocking betrayals, just a calm relationship that slowly lost its warmth over time. Brian was reliable in every sense. He worked steadily, paid every bill without fail, fixed things when they broke, and almost never complained. Somewhere along the way, I confused comfort with monotony. I never said it directly, but I felt restless. I wanted something different, more excitement, more attention, something that reminded me I still mattered. Brian's closest friend, Jason, had been part of our lives for years. In many ways, he was Brian's opposite. He talked more, carried himself with confidence, and always had a joke ready. He was single, social, and seemed to move through life without worry. I never believed I saw him as anything more than a friend. At least, not consciously. One evening, we hosted a casual barbecue in our backyard. A few neighbors stopped by, drinks were shared, and nothing about the night felt unusual. Brian and Jason were discussing work while I sat nearby, listening without much interest. At one point, Jason joked that Brian was lucky to have someone as patient as me. I laughed and responded, maybe I chose the wrong guy. Maybe I should have gone with his friend instead. Everyone chuckled. Brian laughed too, though his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. To me, it was just a stupid remark, nothing more. I didn't dwell on it. Jason, however, reacted differently. His laughter didn't sound the same. After the guests left, Brian became unusually quiet. When I asked what was bothering him, he said, "That thing you said earlier, it didn't sound like a joke." I brushed it off and told him he was overreacting. I insisted I was kidding. He nodded, but something between us changed. I could sense it. In the weeks that followed, Jason began messaging me. At first, it was harmless, funny images, casual jokes, simple check-ins. I convinced myself there was nothing wrong with it. Brian knew we all communicated from time to time. I didn't hide the messages, but I also didn't shut them down. One night, Jason sent a message that said, "Sometimes jokes reveal what people really mean." That should have been the end of it. Instead, I replied, "You're reading too much into it." The truth was, I enjoyed the attention more than I wanted to admit. Jason's messages slowly changed. He complimented me, told me I deserved more appreciation, and suggested Brian didn't value me enough. I didn't defend my husband. I didn't correct Jason. I simply listened. One afternoon, Jason stopped by the house while Brian was at work. He said he was in the area and wanted to drop something off. We stood in the kitchen talking, but the mood felt heavier than usual. He brought up my comment from the barbecue and said it had stayed with him. I laughed awkwardly and told him it was meaningless. "I don't think it was," he said. "I think you meant it." My pulse quickened. I told him he was crossing a boundary. He looked at me calmly and replied, "I'm just responding to the boundary you crossed first." That sentence unsettled me. I asked him to leave. He did, but not before saying, "If you ever want what you joked about, you know where to find me." That night, I couldn't sleep. I replayed every moment in my mind. I hadn't cheated. There had been no physical contact. Still, something already felt damaged. Jason didn't back off. The messages kept coming. The compliments became more direct. The tone grew unmistakable. Instead of blocking him or telling Brian the truth, I responded cautiously, just enough to keep the conversation alive. Brian noticed the change. He asked why I was always on my phone. I dismissed his concern and blamed work. Then came the argument that changed everything. Brian and I were fighting about something trivial, household chores, I think. In frustration, he said, "Ever since that joke, it feels like I'm competing with my own best friend." That's when I lost control. "You're imagining things," I snapped. Jason actually listens to me." The silence that followed was unbearable. Brian looked at me and asked why I was comparing him to Jason. I had no answer. The next day, Brian confronted Jason. I wasn't present, but later Brian told me what happened. Jason admitted he had feelings for me and believed I felt the same. Brian came home early that day, his face drained of color. He asked me directly if I had ever encouraged Jason. I tried to explain. I told him it was never supposed to escalate. That it all started as a joke. Brian listened quietly, then said, "But you didn't stop it." He was right. That same evening, Jason crossed the final boundary. He texted me, saying Brian wasn't good enough for me and that I should leave him. He said he was ready to be with me for real. I showed Brian the message. He didn't shout or explode. He sat down and said, "I can't live like this." He explained that betrayal isn't only physical, it's about dignity and respect. And he no longer felt either from me or from Jason. Jason called. Brian asked me to put the call on speaker. Jason repeated everything, insisting he was serious and claiming my joke had given him hope. That was when the weight of my mistake fully hit me. Brian told Jason never to contact us again. Then he turned to me and said, "I don't know if I can stay married to someone who jokes about replacing me and allows my closest friend to believe it's possible." I cried. I apologized endlessly. I begged him to understand that I never intended to hurt him. But intention didn't change the damage. Brian slept in the guest room that night. A week later, he moved out entirely, not just because of Jason, but because he felt embarrassed, insecure, and disrespected in his own marriage. Jason lost his best friend. I lost my husband. And a joke meant to be funny became the moment everything fell apart. Months later, Brian and I tried counseling. He admitted he couldn't erase my words from his mind or forget how easily I spoke about replacing him. Jason disappeared from our lives completely. I learned a painful truth: humor often reveals more than we realize. And when you joke about breaking someone's heart, don't be shocked when someone takes you seriously, and the person who loved you stops laughing forever.